Hey everybody, it's Mr. N here, and today we are going to be learning slope fields. So, you know what a slope is, and we know that we can find the tangent line at a particular point, which is the slope of the graph at that point, and we can put all these together, and we end up with something that would be called a slope field. So basically what we're going to do today is learn how to create the slope field and determine what the slope field tells us. Basically, the slope field will give us an idea of what our original equation may look like. It's more of a visual graphical representation. If I take this one, for example, right here on number 1, this we know dy dx is our derivative. So naturally, to get to the original function, what you have been taught would be to integrate this. And since this is with respect to x, I could separate the variables and say dy equals x minus 1 times dx, and I integrate each side. Y will be 1/2 x squared minus x plus c, obviously, right? And this gives us a parabola. So that is my original equation. So now if I sketch a slope field, it should look something similar to this parabola. Now on some of these you'll be able to separate the variables and solve, and that's going to be a whole separate lesson that I'll remind you about. And on some of them, such as number 2, that task will be daunting, so we wouldn't want to do that. But let's start with number 1, and let's start to determine how we create a slope field. So let me erase this right here. And let's take a look at what we're going to do. What I'm going to do is I have this equation, dy dx. And remember, the dy dx is, well, I just erased that, is the slope. And this value here is going to be what the slope is. So basically, what I want to do in this, I want to choose a value for x and then determine what my slope is. So we just start with the basics. If I choose a value of x, we'll just say 1. I put in 1, so my equation is, remember the slope here we know as x minus 1. That's what it was from above. So I put in 1 minus 1, and I will get 0. So I'm just going to erase this. I just wanted you to see how I got the 0. But I just want to erase this in the sense of this table and just keep the 0 right here, just so it doesn't get too messy. So now I'm going to go to the x value of 1 right here. All of these have an x value of 1. Every single one of these points has an x value of 1. And at that x value of 1, my slope is 0. How do I do a slope of 0? That's a horizontal slope. So I'll put in a horizontal slope of 0 like this. So I've put this in for all of these, and now I can move on to the next one. Now some of these, I'll put in, say, a value of 2. I'll put in a value of 3. Will you have to use every single x value? You might have to, unless you start seeing the pattern. If you start seeing the pattern, then you can finish it off based on that pattern and just give an approximation because you can visually see what's happening. For example, on this one, you'll have to choose an x and a y to get a slope. When we get there, we'll do that. And then at this one, the pattern might be a little bit different. So let's continue on with this problem, and let's choose another value right here. I'll just choose x equals 2. We'll keep it simple. And so when I put this in right here, right up in here, 2 minus 1 gives me a value of 1. So now at 2, at x equals 2, and it's going to happen for every x equals 2 value, I will have a slope of 1. Well, how do I put a slope of 1 in? So if I'm looking at this, I'm going to go up 1 over 1. So I want to aim my slope like this. Remember, that only happens here. At 1.5, it's going to, or 2.5, it's going to be different. At 3, it's going to be different. So you just have to put a little dash mark there because it's just an approximation. So let's do that. I'm going to aim this way. So all these are going to have a diagonal slope of 1, and I'm just quickly just marking these in. Okay, let's go the other direction now. Let's put in an x value of 0 right here. I want to try all the x's that are zeros. Well, 0 minus 1 gives me negative 1 as my slope. So that means this is going to switch direction, and it's going to go like that. So all of these will have this, they'll be aimed in a negative direction, so down 1, over 1, so it'll be aimed like this. So let's go ahead and put those in, and that's negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, and I've put all these in. Okay, well, let's choose another value. Let's choose negative 1. Eventually, you'll be able to do this without having to make the table. You just say, okay, at negative 1, I'm taking a look at this. At negative 1 minus 1 is going to be negative 2. So I'm going to, right here at negative 1, I'm going to go down 2 over 1. So I'm going to aim it like this. So it's going to be a little bit steeper. So that means this will be a little bit steeper like this. A little bit steeper, a little bit steeper. All of these will just be a little bit steeper. Like that. So now if I put in, so we said here this was negative 2. If I put in, say, 3, I'll get positive 2 as my slope. So that means this, I'm going to aim it from, say, right here. I'm going to aim it up 2 over 1. So I'm going to aim it that direction, like that. So notice how those get steeper there. Do you see the pattern that's happening? In fact, I don't even have to finish my table. I could just base it on the pattern. And the pattern goes back to what we talked about originally when I did solve this. This is a parabola. It's like this. Do you see how this is that parabolic shape? It comes down and goes through there. Where do I draw my parabola? I don't know because I don't know the value of c. If you were given an initial condition, you can solve for this and know exactly which of these it would be. But for right now, we don't know which one it's going to be. We're going to draw all possible situations. So moving on, if I put in 4, my slope here becomes 3, so that means that's even steeper right there. So I'll make a steeper curve right there. And if I do it in the other direction, if I put in negative 3, I'll get negative 4, so that's a bit steeper there. So notice now I'm just kind of estimating what these are, and then it gets even steeper as we go, and even steeper. So at this point, it's just an approximation. I'm just drawing these in to kind of represent what's going to happen, because we already know that this is going to be a parabolic shape. So somewhere in here, and I'll use another color, you'll have this parabolic type shape. We don't know exactly where it is. It could be up here. It could be where I drew it. It could be down here. We don't know. We need to be given an initial condition. So I only drew this green line in just to kind of give you guys an idea of what you're looking at. All right, so let's move on to number 2. In fact, if I can try to get rid of that green line, I want to. And it won't let me. I would have to erase the whole thing. Nope, it won't let me. Okay, so anyway, we're just keeping this in as reference right now. All right, moving on to number 2. So let's take a look at this. I want to slide this over just a little bit so we have a little bit more room here. And this time, if you were to make a table for this, you would have to make a table for x, for y, and then your slope. Remember, dy dx is your slope. All right. So I would have to choose these two values. These are the values I'm choosing. Okay, so let's just start with 0, 0. If I choose 0, 0, right here, well, I get 0 minus 0. The slope is 0. That's a horizontal tangent. What if I chose right here? 1, this point right here, 1 for x, 0 for y. I'll get a slope of 1. What if I chose 2 for x, 0 for y? I'll get a slope of 2. So up 2 over 1. Look what I'm doing. Just again, right here, I'm going to go up 2 over 1. So I'm going to aim it this way. And again, these don't have to be that precise, as long as you get the idea of what's going on. Notice how they're getting steeper as I go to the right. So in other words, if I choose 3, 0, this was a slope of 2. This is going to be a slope of 3. And then a slope of 4. What if I went in the other direction? If I chose negative 1 and 0. So right here, negative 1, 0, I would get a slope of negative 1. Negative 2, 0, I would get a slope of negative 2. So these get steeper as I move to the left. So far, that's what my slope field looks like. Now, this table can just go on forever. at some point you could just do it in your head and just say, okay, so if I pick this point right here, okay, if I pick the point 1, 1, what's my slope going to be? 0. 1 minus 1. Wait a minute. If I pick the point 2, 2, my slope will be 0. I'm starting to see a pattern. Look at this. This is the pattern that I see. I'm going diagonally like this. So that's the pattern I see there. They're all horizontal slopes that way. Okay, what if I picked the point? You will see, since this is a diagonal pattern, let's try this right here. I picked the point 1, 1. What if I picked this diagonal point right in here? So what if I picked 2 in the x, 1 in the y? Well, I'll get the same slope of 1. So all of these have this diagonal pattern of 1. In other words, if I pick the point 3, 2, that would be a slope of 3 minus 2, 1. Again, let me put it in the table for you. If I picked 3 and 2, that would give me 1. So at 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, that gives me a slope of 1. So all of these diagonally will have a slope of 1. So it looks like that. And then if I did it again, since there's a diagonal pattern, let's see what the next one would be. And I'm going to pick this one right here. So if I picked 2, 0, I got this. What if I picked 3, 1? This diagonal portion of it. Well, 3 and 1, that would give me a slope of 2. So again, these have slopes of 2 going this way. Slopes of 2 along that pattern. Then slopes of 3 along this pattern. Then slopes of 4 along this diagonal pattern. And then here would be slopes of 5 along the diagonal pattern, slopes of 6, slope of 7, and so on. So that's what that pattern looks like. Okay, moving on to the other side of it. All right, so now I have this diagonal pattern going this way, so let's pick another one right here. We will say this point, since I found out the pattern on this side, let's see if there's a pattern on this side. All right, so if I pick the point -1, 0, let's pick this diagonal counterpart. I should say diagonal this way, since we're going this diagonal this way. Let's pick the point 0, 1. So 0 in the x, 1 in the y, that would give me a slope of -1. So it's following this diagonal pattern of -1 as my slope. So that means this one right here will be -2. So -2, -2, -2, -2. This one will be this next one will be -3. And then -4. Again, I am just estimating these slopes at this point. Then -5. Notice how they're just getting more vertical in the slopes in a negative pattern. So that's what it looks like. So that is the slope field for this one. And can anyone possibly see what this would look like? Well, can you see that this kind of comes in and goes like this? This will come in and go like that. These curves go like this. This actually ends up being an asymptote when you solve it, and these also go like this. So these are going steeper as we go down. All right, these are -1, and they're getting flattening out, and they're getting steeper this way. These are coming in like this. So this curve kind of looks like that. It's one of those that you graphed in trig. All right, moving on to number 3. What I would like you to do at this point is I'd like you to pause the video, try number 3 on your own, and then come back to see how I do it. So here we have a slope. Let's choose another color. A slope to y. So I only have y's. I don't need to pick any x's. So for my values here, if I were to make a table, I would choose a y and then the slope. If I chose y 0, the slope would be 0. So the slope at y, everywhere where y is 0. So this is where y is 0. All these points where y is 0. It doesn't matter what x is, I have a slope of 0. If I were to choose a y value of 1, I would get a slope of 2. So a y value of 1, right here is a y value of 1. I have a slope of 2. So that's kind of steep like this. Okay, and if I were to choose a y value of negative 1, I would get a slope of negative 2. So that goes this way. So I'm going to estimate this. I'm going to go down 2 over 1, so I'm going to point it like this. And all these would be, these little hash marks would be parallel to that. Okay, let's just finish the top of the graph. If I pick 2, I would get a slope of 4. So this is all y values of 2. I get a slope of 4, so those are getting really steep, like that. And then if I picked a y value of 3, it would be 6. So all of those are pretty steep. Do you see how I noticed the pattern here? And then these at top would be super steep. Okay, then doing the bottom part. If I picked a y value of negative 2, it would be negative 4. So like this. And negative 5, or negative 6, sorry. Like that. And then negative 8. Super steep slope. Negative 8. So do you see what this kind of looks like? This is similar to the other one in that I have something that's coming in like this and like this. That's what's happening here. Because if you picked a half, you would get a slope that's like this. So the slopes are coming in this manner and in that manner. So that's what that graph looks like. All right, let's move on to number 4, and I want you to do the same thing. I want you to pause the video. I want you to try to do it on your own and then check the answer here. All right, so for this one, let's take a look at it. Let's choose another color again, and I will do this one. And over here, I need to choose both x's and y's. What happens if I have an x and I have a y and then I have my slope? What happens if I pick x is 0? Well, when x is 0, anytime my value of x is 0, this is y, going up and down is y, this is where x is 0, I don't have a point, it's undefined. So at x is 0, everything here, whenever x is 0, is undefined. So I can't put anything along this vertical line at x equals 0 because it's undefined. So let's see, what happens when I pick x is 1? Okay, so for x being 1, the y value will change. When x is 1 and y is 0, it's 0. When x is 1 and I said y is 0, I get 0. When x is 1 and y, say, is 1, I'll get a slope of 1. So this is following a pattern. The slope will be 2, 3, 4. So now when I go in a negative direction, suppose x is 1 and y is negative 1, I'll get a slope of negative 1. So that's negative 1. This will be negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. All right, moving on with this. If I chose x is 2 and y is 0, I will get 0. X is 3 and y is 0, I will get 0. Do you see a pattern here? So I could fill all these in like that. Just don't fill in the middle one. Okay, so then moving along with that pattern, look at this diagonal pattern that I saw here. When I picked over here at x is 1 and y is 1. At 2, 2, I'll have a slope of 1 as well. So this gives me this diagonal slope. I can't put anything there. That looks like that. Let's try this point right here. Notice how I had negative 1. Well, let's try it the other way. Since this one gave me a diagonal line this way, let's see if I get a diagonal line that way. All right, so if I pick x to be negative 1 and y to be 1, I'll get a slope of negative 1. So that continues along a pattern like this. So it's kind of like an X without filling in that middle spot. Over here, what you will notice, let's pick, say, this point. If I picked X is -1 and Y is 2, I'll get a slope of -2. So that becomes like this, -2. What ends up happening is if you kind of do this, these on this side, let me show you, on this side will reflect and mimic the other side. So it's almost like I'm folding this over and I get the same patterns on the other side. And you could put in values to test this. So that's what's happening. So this will mimic it here, but the opposite direction right there. And then same thing down here. I will get, suppose I put in X is -1 and Y is -2. So X being -1, Y being -2, it's going to mimic what this one is, but in the opposite direction. So like that, then like that, and like that. Same thing on these, they will mimic that. And then on this side, we've already done it. Let's pick a point such as, we haven't done any of these, such as X is 2, Y is 1, I'll get a slope of 1/2. So that's more like this. If I pick X is 3, Y is 1, so X is 3, Y is 1, I'll get a slope of 1/3. X is 3, so this becomes more like this and like that. And then suppose I picked over here X is 3, Y is 2, I'll get a slope of 2/3, a little bit steeper. And then here like that. So that's what ends up happening there. And on the other side, I could do all of these, and I will show you what this final result looks like. So when all is said and done, this is what it looks like. It's almost kind of like a starburst pattern, where, remember, you don't have anything happening here at X is 0, no matter what the Y value is. You can approximate these 1/2 values if you want, but you don't need to. So that's what ends up happening on this one. Kind of a cool pattern there. So anyway, these are slope fields. This is the basics of it. We will do more as the days go on. So thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, get the notifications, and I'll see you in the next video.